I may have mentioned their first names, but I want to allow them to go ahead and introduce themselves and also the prospective work that what they do. But more than anything, I want to say thank you for carving out the time to be a part of our Lunch and Learn today. Donetta, would you mind going first, please?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Donetta Foxx, and I'm the program leader for Community Restorative Court in Dane County. My previous job included, I worked 25 years in the Department of Corrections. I retired in 2016 as a supervisor, and I started with Restorative Court in Dane County in 2018. We are a pre-charge diversion program, and I'll get into more of that later.
All right,
but thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jonathan, would you like to go next, please?
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jonathan Scharrer. I am clinical associate professor at the University of Wisconsin Law School and the director of the Restorative Justice Project there. Can again come back to that a little bit to talk about our work kind of around the state, but it is a full-time experiential learning program for law students where we work on a variety of restorative justice initiatives, kind of all over the state and beyond.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Sylvester, if you don't mind, I'm introducing yourself, sir.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Sylvester Jackson. I'm the lead organizer of the Milwaukee chapter of EXPO, which stands for Ex-incarcerated People Organizing. What we do here at EXPO, we became an organization in 2014, working around prison reform, banning the box, peer support specialists, and making things better for individuals that's in prison and those who are in the community. And we are behind the Unlock the Vote campaign, which is what we're pushing in this state to follow other states to allow individuals formerly incarcerated their rights to vote, even before they, are released from papers.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I want to go ahead and really just kind of dig into it. So I want to ask, why did you choose your career path?
Myself?
We can go ahead and popcorn it. If you don't mind, Mr. Jackson, if you can go first.
But born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, coming up in poverty, violence, abuse, I chose the paths of the streets. And for years, I pledged and honored myself to the streets and the code that came with it. And by the grace of God, I overcame it. And what helped me in overcome it is in 2007, I was incarcerated for 10 years. And it was during that time I had a chance to reevaluate my life and the course that I was on. And I began to see the things inside the system that was not helping people to return, but, creating blocks, mental as well as physical blocks. So when people return, recidivism will remain high because of the lack of things. So I chose to learn the law. I spent 7 years teaching myself the law. And with that knowledge, I challenged the DOC on 2 occasions. And by the grace of God, I won those lawsuits and had change in style in the prison that I was in, as well as some of the things that was statute related. And when I was released in 2017, I come right out to some more blocks that was created by the city of Milwaukee regarding registrants and the ordinance. So I reached out and found an attorney out of Illinois, and we sued the city of Milwaukee. And again, by the grace of God, we got victory in there, and it created more space for justice. And so just seeing the things that was being created in the system that was definitely against people like myself and others who go in the system to be corrected, it was being everything but that. And I just was elated when I got out and found out there was an organization like EXPO existed, because we wasn't getting that information in the system. And so I grabbed a hold, and I've been running with it ever since.
Yeah, blessings. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, and more, I want to make sure I add this. I appreciate your journey, but then also I appreciate the path that you've taken, not to only change your life, but then also change the lives of others that you are connected to. So I just want to just make sure that that's being said as well. And so again, and I'm a big person. I always ask the people their why, right? So Donetta, if you don't mind me asking your why.
Sure. So I started my adult professional career in retail. I did that for about 15 years. And when I had my first child, I was looking for something that was a little more stable with hours and pay, and just wanted to be home more because I wasn't able to do that with retail. And a friend of mine had worked in the prison system and kind of gave me some information and kind of steered me in that direction. And so I started working for corrections, thinking I can go in and make a difference as well, working with the residents there. I don't like calling them inmates. And so I did that for 25 years and decided and saw kind of what Sylvester was talking about, the roadblocks and the things that were not being offered and given, and how detrimental it was coming out of prison, trying to get back to a normal sense of life and getting back into society. And so I wanted to do something more or something different. And so when I retired, I've actually learned about restorative justice while I was working in the prison, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to use it. And then I started volunteering for Dane County for the restorative court. And once I retired, I came back as a employee, and now I get to work on the other side where we're trying to help keep people out of the system and offer them resources to kind of get their life back on track and moving in the right direction. So that's how I got into it. It's just seeing the barriers, like Mr. Jackson said, is it just stays with you for life once you get that record, and it's so hard to get out from underneath it. So whatever I can do to help young people either not get in that path to begin with or try to find a way to get out of that, that's what I'm doing. Why I do what I do now.
Yeah, Ms. Foxx, I want to say thank you for being such a blessing to so many. You know, I'm not only do I know about your work, have participated and really have seen the change that not only that you've made in young people's lives, but just the outlook on how our young folks are really just kind of just thinking, hey, there is possibility. There is, you know, but there's a choice that has to be made within that possibility as well. So I want to say again, I appreciate your work. Jonathan, if you don't mind me asking, what is your why?
Sure. Well, the sort of the part of the simple why that I think started me on the journey, right, is this idea of wanting to help people, to wanting to make a difference in our communities, wanting to work on criminal justice reform issues, and systemic change was something that was really passionate, you know, in me before I really ever even decided to go to law school, and really had the great fortune of having some really formative experiences and opportunities, even before going to law school, to spend you know, even a summer as an intern at the Mendota Juvenile Treatment Center, to sort of see what that system looked like, and to sort of see how treatment can be done, and looking at and better understanding what the system of incarceration looks like, particularly for youth and juveniles, and recognizing sort of the needs that exist around sort of, you know, mental health, and then moving into law school, I really, you know, decided I didn't want to wait 3 years to help people, and sort of, you know, getting exposed to restorative justice really early, on my legal education, through Justice Janine Geske, and all of her work at Marquette University Law School, and really just sort of caught the bug there. You know, I really expected that again. I mean, I did practice law after graduating, and knew it was going to have restorative justice be part of my life, in one form or another, and certainly the prison programs that existed, you know, most notably sort of the Challenges and Possibilities program up at Green Bay Correctional, which no longer exists, but operated for about, you know, 25 years there. And you know, again, I had the great fortune of being able to be involved in for almost 10 years, of being able to go in and work with individuals who who are incarcerated there, as well as bringing in community members, other law students, lawyers, judges, business leaders, people from Milwaukee community, to sort of sit alongside and share in that experience and really form community over the course of 3 and 4 days. And one of the things that they sort of told us that it's great that it was here. It's very transformative um, to myself, and I know all the rest of the people who are involved in that program. But they really said, it's great for us to hear this now, but I really need to hear this in schools. And that sort of pushed us as well to sort of start working in Milwaukee public schools. And that just really kept sort of building the work. And eventually I graduated 2008. And then in 2013, I came here to the University of Wisconsin to run their restorative justice program, their clinical program. And just sort of seeing the ways in which it really helps transform lives, really helps bring healing to the law, is a very different way about looking at things, but actually makes a really dramatic change for people. But views them as people, right? The sense of it's a very humane sort of process and even philosophy itself. So really just seeing the impact that it has on everybody on sort of whatever side of, of a given harm that you might be on, the ways in which it just transforms lives was really powerful for me. And kind of haven't ever stopped since then. So now going on what would be like 15, 16 years from exposure to that to sort of what I get to do every day. And I'll talk more about that later on.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And thank you also for not only your perspective, but the fact of being willing to just jump in there and you saw what was needed and what needed to be done. So and also willing to continue down that path, right? To be able to bring, not only bring people together, but then also say, hey, something has to change. Really appreciate the work that you do. I know there's some other stuff that you do as well. So again, I appreciate you. So I'll go ahead and shoot. I know Sylvester said that he'll be right back. He had to run. I know he's also, oh, there he is. He's in his office as well. Thank you, sir. All right. So this question is for you, Jonathan, as far as, so what is restorative, excuse me, for our audience who may not necessarily know, if you can really give them, in your world, what is restorative justice?
Sure. So it's a really broad thing. So it's an approach towards dealing with harm in the criminal justice system. It's dealing with crime, but can be sort of broader than that of dealing with harm between individuals. And it's sort of both this philosophy that looks at sort of the harm that's been done, focusing on what is sort of needed to make it right, looking at the impacts of what that harm is, and a sort of future oriented, looking at sort of repairing that harm rather than, as we do sort of in the traditional sort of punitive or retributive system, is focusing all our attention on, the person sort of responsible for that harm, and turning all of our attention and system resources towards them in a really sort of punitive way. Instead, restorative justice looks at people in a very holistic fashion, where their sort of total context is relevant, separating the person from the behavior, that people are more than just sort of what they do. And also focusing on the people who've been harmed, or those, whether it's people, individuals, communities who've experienced harm, and looking at what can be done to sort of make things right. So we peel back the why this sort of all happened.
Right.
Then we look at figuring out what can we do to make that as right as possible and help everybody move forward in a sort of a positive way. So it is both an approach and then sort of a series of practices, right? So there's restorative justice has many different varieties in the ways that it looks from whether that's the community setting to the incarcerated setting, and many different processes, from the circle process to community conferencing to victim offender dialogues, and can be used in diversion, can be used sort of at any point, right? Sort of even pre-arrest all the way
Right.
through post-adjudication, post-sentencing, and in the reentry context. So it's really broad approach that fundamentally looks at the people involved in a situation and figuring out what can we do to help everybody move forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Excuse me. So, Ms. Foxx, because I know that you all do definitely restorative justice, and you're connecting with youth. Would you mind kind of talking about your process, but then also in what is restorative justice to you as well? Even if you don't mind even talking about it before and after, now that you're actually running the program.
Let me start with before. So I've always been a person, kind of like Jonathan was explaining, that I felt like I've always needed to give back to my community. I always wanted to help people, always looking at the good in people and saying that, you know, people are more than, like he said, than just their behavior. And I've always kind of had that social work mentality and heart in dealing with people. So when I started working in the prison system, I thought I was bringing that to the system when I was working with, like I said, the offenders there, and found out that it was hard to kind of bring that kind of perspective into the prison system for various reasons, right? Policies and different things. And so it was just hard to do that. But when I went to that training and really learned what RJ was, I realized that I had been operating in that principle all the time, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't have a language for it. I didn't know that it was restorative justice, but that's how I think. That's how I live in the world. And so it was really intriguing and fascinating to me, like, oh, this is a thing, and it can be done, and it does work. And so I started kind of teaching myself and learning what restorative justice was. And then when I started working with Dane County, I saw a flyer just before I got ready to retire at the library at Madison, saying that they were giving an informational about restorative justice in this program that was coming. And so I went to that informational, and that's when I found out that they were starting this county program in Dane County, restorative justice, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so I signed up as a volunteer. And that's where I started kind of really getting active and getting some training. But basically, like Jonathan said, what it is you're looking at the whole person. Not just what they did, what caused them to do what they did, what are they lacking in their lives, what trauma things have happened to them to make them do what they did. You're looking at the victim. What do they need? What are their questions? Well, how are they going to feel safe again and be able to move forward and get those questions answered? Like, was I targeted? Is this going to happen again? Can I live safely now in my neighborhood or in my space where this happened again? So addressing all of those needs and trying to bring the community together in a way that is healing and not punitive. Mm-hmm. And also, again, with Dane County, with the restorative court that we do, we're actually involved with the legal system, right? So when young people, 17 to 25-year-olds, get into contact with the police, whether it's a misdemeanor or a citation or even a felony in some cases, with certain criteria, they have the option of coming through our program and bypassing the traditional system, which is the court system, where again, we're bringing the victim together along with the respondent and figuring out a way. Well, what we're looking at is what happened, who was responsible for what happened, what that impact was, and then how do we heal that, whatever that impact was on both parties, and get them to move forward. And so that's what we do on a daily basis. And again, we work with 17 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah, and do phenomenal work. I've seen it. I've walked through it to, excuse me. So which is, again, feel blessed and honored to hear so much more about your work as well. Mr. Jackson, if you don't even mind, even kind of just tapping in a little bit as far as, what is restorative justice to you as well? You're on mute, sir.
I apologize. To me, true restorative justice starts by dismantling the so-called justice system itself. Because when we look at the system that we call justice, it's anything but that. It's filled with racism. The law that's on the books pretty much discriminates against minorities, which causes minorities to do more time than people of Caucasian persuasion. So to really, truly restore something as messed up, because I don't want to use the word broken, because the system is not broken. It's doing what it was created to do. Yes, but in order to truly restore things, it must start at the legislative side of things to take away some of the law that is really perpetuating these different hardships of individuals in the system, taking the rights away from individuals. You know, like our thing about voting, that's a right. You know, one of the two most sacred rights in the Constitution is the right to bear arms and the right to vote. And one thing you learn when you're standing in front of a judge immediately before you learn your sentencing is you can't vote and you can't bear arms. And those are the two critical components in our so-called democracy. But to see restorative justice is to address some of the things that we know to be causing the hardship in our community. The judges that's sitting on the bench, the district DA that's allowing a lot of these laws to take place and punish people, I would say excessively. You know, giving anyone 20 years of paper, that it has no sense to it. So you got a person come out of incarceration, and myself, I was given 10 in and 10 out. I've been out 4 years. I've got 6 more years. And regardless of what I'm doing correctly, you know, that's time that's set to make sure I don't make it to that line. And then when we successfully get to that line, we still are penalized by other laws in place that carries on well after you're done with your paper. So I would say this, educating the community is key right now. Educating the people is key to restoring things back the way they should be or should have always been. Because without that knowledge that we have at our hand, we can't, you know, really bring the people together, understanding, okay, what is the key component of your vote? What is the key component of your election? What is the important parts of elected individuals in the district attorney? What is so important about going over here and getting on the pool for those in jury, you know, the jury pool, stuff like that. So I think it starts with educating our community to all the things that continue to be the overbearing, suppressive reality, especially in our community, Black communities.
Well, thank you. I'm thanking all of you all for your perspectives, because the thing is that was not talked about. I mean, and something with Mr. Jackson really just hit on. If someone is stripped from their basic liberties, right? Their basic liberties, right? So, I mean, there's the right to vote. I mean, if we want to get into the firearm thing, but we can, right? But the basic liberties, how are they even viewed as a citizen? How are they even viewed as a person if we do not really dismantle the system and start all over again, right? But right, it's something that has been very clear on not only on this panel, but then also others across the nation, right? Is that it's working. It's not that it's broken. It's doing what it's supposed to do, right? But then also, because we all know this, the people at hand, they know this, right? There's people who are benefiting from it as well. They have a clear understanding of what it is. When is actually what can we do now to say, okay, hey, look, this has to change, and when do we start? And I think there's different pieces, like even with the restorative justice, that's a part of it, right? But then also we have to dig deeper. We have to dig deeper to be able to get people to understand, to like what Mr. Jackson was saying, giving people the basic education, because the basic education is like, hey, when someone is coming home from prison, what does that mean? Right? What are the liberties that are taken away from them? And then for some, they may never get back, because you have people who are on lifetime lifetime GPS or lifetime, and this is in the state of Wisconsin especially, where that's pushed, that we have to be able to help people to not criminalize after someone has been in prison, to still criminalize them once they are after they've given their time. After they've done their time, to recriminalize them once they're out here in the community, That's what I was trying to say. My brain is kind of all over the place. Because, yeah, I mean, again, all of you all are doing phenomenal work, but also we also have to make sure it doesn't stop with you all, right? The work that what we do at Nehemiah, the work that we does with other prospective organizations, we have to make sure the work does not stop. The work that EXPO, we have to make sure that work does not stop, right? So, I mean, and that's the, you know, a part of that is us, but then also a part of that is being able to help the community know they have a role to play in this, right? And we need you all, right? So I want to make sure that's said from my heart. We need you all to be able to keep things going until we can actually not only make that action, provide the action that happens, but then also be able to change the laws as well. So, yes, I want to make sure that that's being said as well. So, something I want to ask you, Mr. Jackson, if you could just tell us about your experience with mental health and treatment restorative courts.
Back in 2005, I admitted myself in a mental health hospital. And at that time, I knew I had come to the realization that I had to do something, or things was going to get a lot worse, quicker than I really wanted to. So my choice was to go into the mental health facility and seek treatment. Even with that history, when I stood before the court, even with the back abuse of both mental, sexual, physical abuse from the age of 7 to the age of 12, 13, none of that was considered, by the court. Even though when you look at a person's history growing up back in the 80s, 90s in Chicago, it was hectic, to say the least. You grew up looking at people getting shot, killed, you become immune to it. I remember when I come home one day from school and it was a gentleman being worked on by the ambulance because he got shot in his neck. I was so numb to what was going on. I didn't care about what he was going through. All I cared about is I seen my towel that my mother had threw out there to the ambulance to use to help stop the blood. I was more upset about my child than the individual life. And so coming up, we didn't have counselors, we didn't have mental health treatment, we didn't have the benefit of psychiatrists and stuff like that. In fact, we was told to choke it up as a man, don't cry, be tough. And growing up made me a numb individual who learned to keep from hurting, set out to hurt others, and when I entered the criminal justice system, all of that was laid out there and there was no attempt to get me help. All it was is to get me convicted, and get me in the system. In the system, there was no effort to treat my depression, my anxiety, my antisocial personality disorder. Wasn't no efforts there. Matter of fact, in one institution, they had 2 psychotherapists for over 1,000 individuals. It was months if you ever seen someone, if they came at all. And so those are the things that contribute to individuals coming back to the community still broken, because they're not receiving a treatment in the system that will help them come out and become more entwined in the community to be an access, because inside the prison, it's even structured to make sure they wear and tear on your mental, the staff go out their way to wear and tear you down mentally, in order to keep that dominant control over you. So my experience with it was detrimental, all except my faith in God kept me through all of it. And I'll say this, without that, I wouldn't be sitting here, because everything else was set up to make sure I failed from the time I entered the system until I walked out of the system. and come back into a community into more hardship by those who's supposed to be looking out for my interests, called parole agents. I literally had to go file a restraining order against a parole agent in order to get that individual off of me, because she was trying her best to send me back to prison. And so the mental health, when you look at in Waukesha County and Eau Claire, I think it's Eau Claire. When you look at the alternative courts that they have in those two places, I believe it's 5. They're not mental health courts, but they're drug courts. In Milwaukee, they have 1. And that screams loud.
Right, yeah.
Right now, we're working with the chief judge here in Milwaukee. We've been pushing, EXPO been pushing to get more funding into the TAD program, treatment, alternative diversion, to put more emphasis on the mental health, because what they looked at, from what I gathered out of our meetings, is they will look at individuals who have drug problems, and then they will find alternatives to sending them to prison in the right area. Okay, but the problem don't start with drugs, it start with the mental. With me, it was my mental health that led to drugs that led to prison.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So to me, I'm glad to see it's now on the table, that mental health have picked up traction from the judges, from the politicians and everything. And now we're really looking into that window of really what is the critical piece that the mental health plays, which is invaluable. Because if the mental is not right, everything else is going to fail anyway. And I can attest to that.
Mr. Jackson, I want to say a couple of things, right? One, I want to say thank you for your transparency. Thank you for, just really being able to put things out there, because I feel like that's what you don't hear enough of, right? We don't hear those stories. And even when there are programs that are inside of the Department of Corrections and things of that nature, but the waiting list is such, that, like you said, if you have 2 psychiatrists to be able to work with a population of 20,000, I'm just I'm generalizing what I'm saying, the number, right? To work with people, it's almost impossible for them to be able to, it is impossible for them to be able to diagnose, but then also to be able to work with, to be able to help people either with some of their challenges, or being able to make sure that they can refer out once that person returns back into society. So I wanted to say thank you so much, and I feel that you've given everyone a lot just to think about, right? With hopefully your words are being taken to heart, and then also with people being able to add action behind it as well. Something I wanted to put out here, excuse me. And so this is more a question to Donetta and also Jonathan, as far as what are the barriers that prevent expanding the restorative justice programs inside of the out in the community, as well as inside of the prisons and Dane County jails. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say Dane County, but inside of the county jails, because it has to be different levels to all of restorative justice, and so. And what are you doing? And this is, I guess, either something else to kind of throw out there as well. And are you connecting with the county jails as well to be able to bring a restorative justice model inside of there as well?
Jonathan, I'll let you take that one, and then I'll piggyback off of you.
Okay. Some of the big challenges, I think, is, first of all, is the resistance to change, right? So it's a sense of looking at something that's different, looking at something that's different than the way that we've done it before, or for quite some time. And the reluctance or hesitance, because what it sort of requires, when you think about restorative justice, in some ways you could really You mentioned the importance of community, right? Well, so that you could really think of it as sort of community justice, right? In this way that individuals sort of with power sort of have to relinquish some of that power, and the systems have to sort of let go somewhat to allow restorative processes to to exist, right? Sort of it's an alternative, right? It's something that's not the traditional system. It's not the sort of punitive system or punitive response. And so first it requires sort of overcoming the resistance to any change, right? Much less a change of the magnitude that we sort of need to think about to continue to expand restorative justice work and restorative justice efforts. So that's sort of the first piece. The second is going to be sort of misunderstandings about it, and that's where sort of as Mr. Jackson said, sort of the education of community, but also education of elected officials, education of individuals all throughout sort of the systems themselves, so that they know what it is, what does it do, what can it be used for, how do we use it appropriately when we think about it in the treatment and diversion space. So that's sort of another piece of it. Then there's obviously, just like everything else, some potential resource issues, right? The sense is like, well, you need to direct resources to it in order to build programs. I mean, it was quite a lot of effort by many individuals to launch the community restorative court that Donetta is a part of, that required really a concerted effort and cooperation and collaboration between sort of county entities, as far as sort of the district attorney's office, human services, the police departments, where everybody sort of has to be on board, like sort of everyone, because of the way that the system just sort of controls and has it really, again, I mean, it's the sole arbiter of anytime you have sort of potentially criminal behavior. And so being able to relinquish some of that control and allow individuals to utilize restorative justice, to allow community organizations, to allow alternate systems to develop in this way of looking at reform or creating alternative systems. That takes time. Again, it takes education, it takes understanding, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what restorative justice is, or what it sort of can accomplish or do, or what population groups it sort of works with. So it's overcoming a lot of those burdens and hurdles, but it's definitely possible. We've certainly seen it here in Dane County. There's another county that's sort of looking at it. Currently it is very effective, but it's overcoming a lot of those, whether that's common misperceptions or misnomers about restorative justice sort of in the first place, and then giving the people, again, in the system, sort of system actors, being willing to sort of take it on, being willing to allow them to exist. And that's sort of what in a lot of ways has to happen, right? It's sort of like it takes the relinquishing of power control from the courts and empowering communities to do justice and to do restorative justice.
Ms. Foxx?
Exactly. And I think when you want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it's education. I think a lot of people have a misconception of what RJ is and what it does and how it works. And people feel like when someone does harm, they need to be punished, right? We've all been kind of stuck in that mindset, and that's what's been ingrained in us. And they think that using restorative justice is just a slap on the wrist, or it's giving somebody an out, right? A free card, free out of jail card. And that's not what it is at all. And building that community is what I think is so special about what we do. We have community members that actually sit in on those circles, that are trained and actually sit in those circles and help process and hold folks accountable, but still let them know that you are part of the community. You are important. We want you here in the community. And what can we do to help you to kind of move forward in that way? So educating those decision makers on what really restorative justice is and what it looks like. And we can explain it all day long, but until you've actually sat in a circle and actually experienced it, it's hard for people to understand. It's harder than going before a judge and just saying guilty or not, here's your sentence or here's your citation, and you out the door. But to sit there and be able to face someone that you've caused harm to and be able to explain why you did that or what the reasoning was behind that, and to feel and hear the impact of what you did to another human being, that's on a whole different level. And that's where the transformation takes place, right? And so if people are not given that opportunity to feel human, to see another human, to be treated like another human, this cycle keeps going. And
That's
so
right.
that's what RJ does, is bring the humanness back into it. We're not robots and we're not animals, and to be treated as such continues to perpetuate what we've been seeing all along. So this what RJ does, is transforming that and bringing the humanity back into the situation and bringing that community back into the conversation. And that's what is needed. And until people really understand and get that and understand the history of the legal system, right? And how that works and how that was created to begin with, that we're going to continue to have these barriers and continue to fight to get this RJ expanded and more people involved. So education is the key.
And I will add, so there is an individual who is pushing forward with an initiative actually here in the Dane County Jail to actually work on developing and into implementing a restorative justice program for individuals who are sort of housed there. So that is something that's growing. So it takes, again, passionate, committed individuals, but also then administration that's open to it, right? It's, again, wherever you got to go, whenever it's something different, you got to convince them that this is sort of worth doing, or the allowing you to do it. So, we're going to continue to see it grow. It continues to gain support as more people get exposure to it, more people learn about it and see the effectiveness of it and the way that it sort of helps everybody. There's been this mention of humanity a number of times, and something that's really been standing out to me, and Mr. Jackson, this really came up when I was listening to you talk. I mean, there's an incarcerated client I was talking with almost 2 weeks ago now, and something he said is really been standing with me and bothering me a lot. And that and I've heard this before, but he said, he says, we're made to feel like if I'm even having a normal human interaction, I'm somehow doing something wrong. And so that doesn't even he doesn't even deserve, right, sort of basic human decency, basic human interaction. And says, like, he, even though he's working in this process, and so the process we're in is a victim, this very serious and sensitive crime dialogue process. And so, he exists in a space in the incarcerated setting, where he's met with a great deal of harm and hardship. And from a lot of the things, right, that Mr. Jackson has talked about, sort of experiencing those things, but it's said, like, it seems so backwards, right? But it's like, I shouldn't even feel like I deserve, right, to feel joy, that I don't deserve to have a normal human conversation. And if I am, I'm somehow doing something wrong. And I said, well, regardless of what that is, that's not going to change how we work with you, how I interact with you. Like, I'm still going to treat you as a person. I don't care, right? So it doesn't matter
Right.
what you've done. It doesn't change fundamentally who you are, and that you are a person worthy of dignity, respect, and human decency, and everything that comes from being a person, and really making sure we don't forget that throughout the way.
Yeah, that's
No, go ahead, jump in there, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm just
I wanted to just touch on that, because in reality, how you going to restore someone when you won't let them move on from the bad choice they made? I remember I used to use the word mistakes. I took that out because we don't make mistakes. We make bad decisions and bad choices. And yet, if there's no room to become better, then we really don't need a justice system in the first place, because the justice system represents correcting. And if you're not correcting something, then you're hampering a person from moving forward. When you're in prison and you go before the PR to be evaluated every often, I think every few years, they don't never listen or talk about what you have established up to the point that you're there that day. They always want you to lean on what brought you there. So they never want you to move away from that. Even when you come out, they don't want you to move away from that bad choice you made. So you can't restore someone if you're not willing to dig into what brought them to where they were. And that's what I've been hearing today that makes so much sense. With me, I had to go back, and it was through a program in not Walpalm, but in the prison where Donald, Columbia, and we took what's called a forgiveness class. And it was in that class when I realized, wait a minute, whether anyone forgive me or not, I had to learn to forgive myself. You know,
Right.
because I already had asked forgiveness from the victim. I already had asked God for forgiveness, but I couldn't get over my own self, giving my own self forgiveness. And once I got in connect with that and moved forward from there, I was able to be restored to where I am today. And it's going to take going into a person yesterday to find out what went wrong in order to bring them away from that point to where they need to go from the day. It's not about what we done or who we were back then. It's about who we are and what we're going to do today on forward. But we have so many sitting in the seat of judgment, and they don't want mercy to be extended unless it's on them. You know, as if they have not done anything that they deserve to be incarcerated over. Because most of the people that's making these laws, if you pull out the skeletons out of their closet, majority of them will be locked up. Just because you've never been convicted doesn't mean you shouldn't be in prison.
Look, thank you. You know, I don't know your spiritual belief or anything. I want to say Reverend Jackson right now, because I mean, what you're saying is that all true, and everything what everyone has said is all connected, right? Right. It's all connected. It's about how do we make people feel afterwards that they're human, right? You know what I mean? It's something that I probably said a million times. There's no such thing as a perfect person, period. I don't care who you are. I don't care, you know, what you believe or not. All of us have flaws. All of us need forgiveness in one way or another. But now it's about how do we continue to go forward? How do we make sure that we learn what needs to be learned? How do we help other people from not making the same choices, right? And that's yeah, man, you almost made me cry because I say that all the time, right? I'm like, no, it's the choices that you make. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, there's this. So it's a couple things, right? So the sense of like points to this idea first of when you look at this idea of sort of corrections, right? In this sense of rehabilitation, right? In the sense, well, sometimes, right? So I hear Mr. Jackson talking about his life and his experiences and the ways that he was forced to sort of become numb to survive, just to live. And that sense of like how if someone has never had an opportunity to habilitate to begin with, right? Like how is there any sort of rehabilitation when you've never given someone even an opportunity and acknowledged what they've experienced? Like in our system, you know, we sort of say this a bunch of times, sort of think about this idea that like someone's first experience with crime or violence is often not when they're perpetrating it, right? When that's not their first experience with it. Their first exposure is often as a victim of it, and often as a child, or being exposed to it 1, 10, 100, or 1,000 times before they ever end up you know, inside a courtroom. And that sense of what happens is when that's never been acknowledged, and then you somehow forfeit your right to sort of victimhood, right? You forfeit the fact that you've been harmed as soon as you've made that decision to harm someone else. I think ignores a lot of the point. And that sense when we think about what are we restoring, this isn't necessarily going back, because maybe what was there before wasn't all that good to begin with, right? You never had anything. Right. So it's instead, if we think about this idea of being forward looking, it's restoring to your best self. And that's what I hear Mr. Jackson say, like, I'm the person I am today. Like he is restored to his best self. Right. That sense of something that was not even necessarily there before, because he never had that opportunity and didn't have people listen to the sort of the problems or the trauma, and no one acknowledging what has happened to you. Systems weren't helping you, weren't sort of coming in and protecting you or keeping you safe. But we're looking instead to sort of track you, follow you, and figure out, like, as you sort of said, like you felt, looking to put you back, rather than responding to what your human experience was, along with any of the mental health struggles that you may have had, and really seeing you as you, right? Sort of recognizing who you are, and not any of these other things, and that we're the sum total of our experiences to this point, right? It's not being held back in that moment in time, but instead of like, who am I? How have I grown? Right? The sense of when we work with someone who was incarcerated at 15 years old, and I see them when they're 25, 30, 35, 40 years old, they're not the same person.
Yeah.
And so to think about acknowledging human growth and capacity for change is really an important element in thinking restorative even.
And on that note, Jonathan, I want to say thank you. I want to make sure, because we're coming, we're closing it on time, and it's happening fast. Donetta, if you don't mind jumping in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we really want to take it all the way back and talking about what Mr. Jackson said, if this restorative process and principles can be used as a preventative, we don't even have to be here talking after the fact. If we would implement this on the front end, we wouldn't even be having these conversations, right? Because we're going to intervene in those situations when mental health is needed, a diagnosis is needed. We need support where somebody's looking for safe and secure housing, a job that's going to keep them on the straight and narrow, that's going to supply the money they need to take care of their families. So that's what we need to be looking at. If we want to transform and restore folks, we need to get them on the front end. We see it coming. We know it's happening. And yet we sit there and we wait and let it happen. And now we want to, after the fact, what can we do to fix it? We just wasted lives, money, and eons of time trying to figure this out. And it's just doing what we should have done in the first place, intervene when we see the issue appearing, right? How can I help you? I know you're struggling. I see that things are not going right. How can we help you? That's what it's all about. Let's get it before it gets to that point. So now our middle school kids, our kids that are witnessing, like you said, Mr. Jackson, those transactions in the street and the gangs and all of that stuff, intervene there with some restorative. I see you as a human being. I see you suffering. I see you having some issues. What can we do to get you on a different path and help you with your whatever it is you need? So that's what we need to be talking about. That's how we do this change.
Right. You know, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I just wanted to give y'all a big hug, and just say, you know, because this is what, not only what we talk about, this is what we need to be doing, right? You know, and this is why we do the work that we're doing, what all of us are doing in our own perspective ways, to be able to get to this point and for people to be able to hear not only what we're doing, but also that we are here for you, right? Even from your own lived experience, your education, your work experience, wherever the case may be. We are here for you to be able to uplift, to be able to help navigate whatever the situations are, but then also to be able to make sure that we are connecting you to the people who can help you. Because for many of us, even including myself, I've been in that situation. Right, and the fact that because, and if we're being honest, there are many people that even though they're off of probation, off of parole, and they're still in prison. There are people who have not necessarily even touched the prison walls, but because of their life situations and the trauma that has happened for them, they're still in prison. They're present, and that needs to stop. That needs to change, and we need that now, not later.
Mr. Jackson was in prison as a kid in that community he grew up in.
Yes.
So it was a natural progression that was going to happen. You understand? Because we didn't intervene. It's a state of mind. Exactly.
Yes, exactly, Aaron. Yeah.
You know, it's ironic to say it took 10 years of physical incarceration to free me from 30 years of mental bondage. And that's the reality of it.
Exactly.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Come get emotional too, right? So I'm trying not to go there, right? But I just want to say again, thank you. I know we're winding down with time and things of that nature. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm thanking you all for your openness. I thank you all for the work that you're doing. But then also, I think just to even add another layer on that, just, you know, continue to walk in the path of what God has set out for you and do the work that what you're doing. Yeah. So before we end, I do have to be able to at least just kind of throw in, we have a reentry conference that is coming up for other conversations like this and others. We have quite a few different keynote speakers. Our reentry conference is September 16th through the 17th, 10 a.m. to 3:30, 10 a.m. on Thursday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday. Please, please, please come and join us. Come and walk this path with us. As you see, not only the phenomenal speakers that will be there, some of our panelists who are here today will be there as well. We have to continue to not only fight the great fight, but then also we need to be able to come up with strategies together. This isn't about one organization doing this. It's about all of us together pushing, going forward, and being able to bring all the pieces together and working together as community. We have to do that. That's the only way that we're going to be able to break these chains that are going on with our young people, that are going on with our parents that are out here. We have to do this together, period. There's no way possible. If we don't do this together, we're failing. So again, thank you, panelists, for your openness, your kindness, and thank you all for being here. Thank you. Also, I want to thank the attendees as well. Thank you all for attending today. Appreciate you. Hopefully, see you all at our Reentry conference on September 16th and the 17th. Appreciate you all, and have a blessed day. I think that is pretty much sums us up. But I'll probably say it a million times. I appreciate every single last one of y'all. As a matter of fact, since I'm in Milwaukee, I'm gonna call Mr. Jackson, try to see if we can get together. I'm not sure if he's still on here or not.
I think he hopped off.
Okay, so yeah, again, I just appreciate every single last one of you all. Looking forward to doing some more work with you all in the future. If you need anything or for us to step up in any type of way, voice or the fact of just standing in the gap, just know that we are your partners in the community as well. So.
Well, thank you, Anthony, for all the work that you're doing. And, we talk a lot about hurt people. Well, healed people heal people.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the thing. When you think about, we work together and we move forward, and we focus on healing and we focus on making things better. And we just never stop. Right? We can't ever give up the fight, and we're all in it together. So Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, everyone have a wonderful day, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and looking forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll take care. Okay.